I know it sounds like a cliche, but I had it all. Everything most people only dream about. I built myself. No silver spoon, no inheritance. Just sweat, sleepless nights, and an idea that blossomed into a tech empire. By 35, my company was worth tens of millions. But my most valuable asset was her. Clara, tonight. She's asleep beside me in our Italian linen sheets, in a bedroom overlooking the bay that we paid for in cash. She breathes so softly, so peacefully, that she seems like a work of art rather than a living person. Her golden hair is spread across the pillow. Her delicate hand rests near me, and on it a diamond engagement ring shines. A size I'm not ashamed to call absurd. I was awake. It wasn't insomnia. It was pure, primal anxiety that had taken up residence in my gut like a cold slab. Tomorrow is the day that will change our lives forever. It's the day my company, my firstborn, will be sold for $50 million net. I had an ironclad prenuptial agreement. I wasn't stupid. I built a business, and I knew how to protect it. But $50 million, that's the kind of money that can make any man uncomfortable, even if you trust your partner 100%. Clara and I had been together for 8 years. She was my muse, my rock. When I was starting out and my apartment smelled of cheap pizza and desperation, she believed in me. She worked 3 jobs so I could focus on the code. I swore that one day she would have everything she wanted, and I kept my promise. Over the last few months, as the sale deal picked up momentum, Clara seemed absent, not sad. Rather, she was too happy. Her smile was too wide. Her eyes shone too brightly. She constantly repeated, "We'll be free soon, Alex. Free to do anything we want." I would explain, "We are already free. We could quit our jobs anytime." But she spoke of some other kind of freedom, a freedom that felt almost sinister. A few days ago, my CFO, Mark, called me. Mark, whom I had known since college, my closest friend, and as I thought, my most reliable ally. He was agitated. "Alex, did you see the latest equity report?" he asked. I shrugged it off. "Of course. It's all part of the process. The buyers need to see we're stable." "Mark, why the formal tone?" He paused. "No, Alex. I'm talking about our internal accounts. Remember the bridge fund we set up to hold a small amount of capital safely until full transaction goes through? It was only $5 million, but a part of it is gone. Small, but it's missing." "What do you mean missing?" My voice turned icy. "In our business, missing meant stolen." "I don't know. I thought it was you. The transaction was flagged as commission fees, but we haven't paid any commission fees. I can't find any record of it. The system shows it was approved from your home IP address." I hung up and looked at the sleeping Clara. Her face was so innocent. "I never approved any commission fees. Mark knew I would never use our home network for financial transactions. And what truly horrified me was that we had only changed our home Wi-Fi router yesterday. I installed a new one and threw the old one in a closet in the laundry room. I remember telling Claire the password, and she said she didn't need it because she only used her phone. But Mark said the transaction was approved via the home IP address. I got out of bed. The golden morning light barely touched the walls, but I felt like everything around me was gray. I quietly went to the laundry room, opened the closet, and retrieved the old router. There was a small red light on it. Someone had plugged it in. It was connected to an extension cord hidden behind a pile of towels. At that moment, my hand was shaking. I wasn't afraid of losing $5 million. I was afraid that I had missed something, that I had been living a lie. I quickly unplugged the router, took it upstairs to my home office. I connected it to a network analyzer. I needed to see what devices had recently connected to it, and I saw. One device was an old iPad Clara used for reading magazines. Another was my work laptop. But the third was completely unknown to me. It had only connected to the network twice in the last 2 weeks. Both times, at night when I was asleep, the device name was simply Phantom 6. I initiated a deep scan. It took a few minutes. When the data appeared on the screen, my heart stopped. Phantom, 6 wasn't just a device. It was another phone, a hidden phone, and the scan showed it was active for only two things: encrypted messages and cloud storage access. I hacked the cloud storage log files, using common passwords people often use. The password, Clara Mark 01. When I saw that password, I felt sick. My closest friends, my life. I logged in. There were 3 files in cloud. Photo, Clara and Mark kissing on my yacht. Video, Clara and Mark in my bed. Document, fund withdrawal plan, phase 2. I opened the document. I expected to see details on how they were going to steal the remaining $5 million from the bridge fund. But what appeared on the screen was much worse, much more sophisticated, and undoubtedly the work of Mark, who knew my company's inner workings as well as I did. The plan wasn't about theft. It was about complete ruin. They knew about our prenup. It guaranteed Clara a small lump sum payment and nothing more. The $50 million was protected, but Mark had found a loophole in my company's corporate structure, Alphatech. Here was their plan. Transaction delay. Mark was to use his position as CFO to create a minor but critical error in the paperwork that would delay the full $50 million wire transfer to my personal account by an extra 48 hours after the deal closed. Lawsuit launch. Within those 48 hours, Clara was to file for an emergency divorce, claiming that all major assets, i.e. the $50 million, were acquired during the marriage and were not actually transferred into my personal control before the filing. Leveraging status, Mark, as CFO, was to provide the court with false or critically misinterpreted documents confirming that the $50 million was still technically under Alphatech's corporate control, though sold, not under my personal control. The end goal, they planned to freeze the asset and demand the court void my prenup, claiming it was signed under duress or non-disclosure of the full financial status, which is why they started bleeding the commission fees to create an impression of chaos. They aimed to claim not just a share, but $25 million. Half. I leaned back in my chair. The world around me went silent. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a professional, cold-blooded heist, plotted by my wife and my best friend. Money had turned them into predators, and they underestimated their prey. I checked the time, 6:30 a.m. The deal was set to close at 10 a.m. I had only 3.5 hours to rewrite their ending. I didn't wake Clara. I didn't shout. Shouting would have been a sign of emotion, and I needed the precision of a Swiss watch. I felt a strange emptiness that was scarier than any anger. In that moment, Alex, the loving husband, died. What remained was Alex, the founder of Alphatech, who was now going to defend his empire against 2 con artists. Step 1, Mark. I immediately called my lead counsel, Lisa, on her private, secured line. She picked up on the first ring. As always, Alex, what is it? You sound... Lisa, no questions. I need your full attention. Mark is conspiring with Clara. They plan to challenge the sale and the prenup. I have the evidence. I need you to do 2 things by 9 a.m. Go! Her voice sharpened like a razor. First, immediately, through secure channels, file a notification for Mark's termination effective retroactively. His CFO authority must be voided as of yesterday. No severance. Reason: financial misconduct investigation. Second, you must rewrite Clause 7.1.b of the sale contract. I want the $50 million wired not to my personal account, but to a new, fully protected offshore trust account that we established for charity. And I want Mark to have zero access to the banking system to confirm the transaction. I will handle that myself. Most importantly, the deal must close today by 10 a.m. no matter what. Tell the buyers it's a critically urgent regulatory change. Alex, are you sure about firing Mark? It might trigger... I am absolutely sure. He's already stolen $5 million. Now he wants half of $50 million. Execute this. No paper trail. Step 2, Clara. I left the office. Clara was already awake. She was sitting on the bed, wrapped in a silk duvet, looking like an angel. Sweetheart, already working? Don't stress so much. We're free today. She smiled, and her smile was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. It was full of greed and ignorance. Yes, I'm working. The deal? There are some minor legal details. I walked over and kissed her forehead, forcing myself not to recoil. The kiss was revolting. Mark is handling all the final paperwork today. He's looking out for us, as always. Oh, good. I knew Mark would sort out. He's so reliable. She took my hand. Her touch made me feel like I was holding a dead fish. Why didn't you go take a shower? I'll make you our favorite strong espresso. I want you relaxed for this huge event. That's a wonderful idea, Clara, I said, watching her joyous face. Step 3, the trap. While she was in the kitchen, I quickly silenced my phone and slipped into her closet. I found the small handbag she used for yoga. The hidden phone, Phantom 6, was inside. I quickly took several photos of the screen, proving her involvement in the plan, specifically her text with Mark about filing for divorce. I knew she wouldn't take that phone to the closing. She'd leave it here. I replaced the phone and quietly left. I took a cold shower, washing away her scent and my feelings. At 9:45 a.m., we both got into the car. Clara was radiant, dressed in a suit bought with my money, ready to celebrate the victory she thought was theirs. When we walked into the boardroom, Mark was already there, sitting next to the buyers and smiling. His smile was as fake and smug as Clara's. Alex, you look great, ready to become one of the wealthiest men in this city. He winked. Ready, I replied coldly. We sat down. Lisa was already there. Her eyes met mine. They held an iron resolve. She had done her job. The buyers, eager to close the deal, started the opening speech. Then Lisa interrupted them. Gentlemen, before we proceed to signatures, I must inform you of one critical change that Alex just mandated. Due to a recent shift in tax law, we must amend the final recipient of the funds from Alex's personal account to a trust account for asset protection. All documents have been reviewed and prepared. This does not affect the deal. And by the way, since Mr. Mark was unable to attend work this morning due to unforeseen circumstances, I will be in charge of the final fund transfer confirmation. I watched Mark's face. First, his smile slid away, then his eyes narrowed with sheer panic. He realized his opportunity to block the transaction was gone. In that instant, he also realized he had been fired. Clara, however, sat next to me, still smiling, oblivious. Her only fear was that the transaction would be delayed. I signed the documents. Lisa confirmed the wire transfer to the trust account. $50 million were mine. They were safe. I put down the pen, turned to Mark, who was barely holding on to his chair, and quietly said, I need you to step out and get me a coffee. Extra strong. I'm exhausted. Mark stood up, his face deathly white. As he walked out, I looked at Clara, who was still unaware of her fate. I waited for the door to close behind him. Alex, you're so smart. Everything went perfectly, she whispered, squeezing my hand. I pulled my hand free. Almost perfectly, Clara. I have one more document we need to sign right now. It was actually pre-agreed. By the family, that is. I nodded to Lisa. She produced the final document. A full, final divorce filing confirming the activation of the prenup, which stipulated only $100,000 for Clara. What is this? Clara laughed, thinking it was a joke. I leaned into her, my voice quiet as ice. That's your freedom, Clara. The freedom to do anything you want. But without my money, enjoy your Phase 2 plan. It just became irrelevant. And then the door opened. It wasn't Mark with the coffee. Instead, two men in sharp suits, security guard hired by Lisa, entered the room. They walked past the empty seat where Mark had been sitting moments ago, but their focus was elsewhere. Mrs. Clara, one of them began, his voice monotonous and steady. We are instructed to escort you to retrieve your personal belongings and escort you off the premises. You are prohibited from approaching Mr. Alex's property. Clara stopped laughing. Her face morphed into a mask of utter confusion, then shock. She looked at me, searching for an answer. Alex, what is this circus? Why the security? Is this a prank? I simply nodded towards a divorce document still lying in front of her. It's not a prank, Clara. It's reality. The documents you see are the full and final marriage dissolution package. Your prenup is active. You receive $100,000, as we agreed 8 years ago. The other $49.9 million remain in my protected trust account. I became free of you before you became free of me. She snatched the paper. Her eyes quickly scanned the text, then stopped at the amount. She finally understood. Her face contorted with a rage that was as cold and greedy as her lies. You're lying. This can't be true. We have to file for divorce to challenge the agreement. You can't. I already filed, Clara. I said calmly, though a volcano was churning inside me. File before you and Mark could block the company sale. You thought today's closing would make me vulnerable. You were right, but you underestimated how fast I am. You knew? You knew about us. Her voice broke into a shriek. About you and Mark? Of course I knew, for several days. You were so consumed with the planning that you didn't even notice you left a digital footprint behind. The hidden router, the password ClaraMark01. Did you really think I, the founder of a cybersecurity company, wouldn't spot such an amateur trail? I saw the photos. I saw the video. And I read your Phase 2 plan. It was touching, especially the part about Mark submitting false reports. The security guards were already standing close to her. And Mark, she gasped, where is Mark? Mark is currently speaking with my attorney and my head detective. I replied, Mark has been terminated for fraud and the withdrawal of $5 million. That money was wired to an offshore account, and I have filed a police report for corporate theft. His career, his reputation, his freedom, it's all over. I hope that $5 million was worth it, because that's all he will have left when he gets out of jail. Clara tried to stand, but the guard gently blocked her path. You're a monster. You won't give me anything after everything I've done for you, she screamed. Hysteria started to take over. You did me a favor, I said, signing the last copy of the company's sale document. You showed me the true cost of trust, and I paid for it. And you got your fee. It's enough to rent a small apartment. Start over, Clara. And next time you plan a financial assassination, hire someone who understands IT better than my CFO. The guards escorted her out of the boardroom. She struggled, screaming my name, but her voice quickly faded down the corridor. I sat at the table, the pen resting on the wood. The buyers were silent, shocked by what they had just witnessed. They had just been party to not only a $50 million financial deal, but also the $50 million end of marriage. I looked at Lisa. Time for Mark, I said quietly. 5 minutes later, Mark returned. He was alone. His face was pale, and he looked 20 years older. Clearly, the conversation with the attorney and detective had been unpleasant. He walked up to me, his eyes filled with hatred and pity. Alex, you did it. You knew. Why didn't you tell me? We could have negotiated. I would have returned the $5 million. It was a mistake. A mistake, Mark? You were kissing my wife on my yacht. You planned to steal half of my life savings. That wasn't a mistake. It was a deliberate, cold-blooded betrayal. And it cost you everything. You are no longer the CFO of AlphaTech. Your access to all systems is revoked. A lawsuit for corporate embezzlement has been filed against you. And the evidence, Mark, the evidence you left behind makes your situation hopeless. He slumped into the chair, his hands running desperately through his hair. Well, you won, he whispered. But you lost more. You lost a friend, you lost love. You're alone now. I smiled, and it was perhaps the coldest smile of my life. You're wrong. I just got rid of 2 scammers who were planning my financial ruin. I lost a fake love and a fake friendship, but I saved my empire. And now I know who to trust. And who is that? His voice was bitter. The legal system, Mark. And myself. I stood up. The deal was done. The money was wired. The traitors were exposed. I walked out of the room, leaving Mark in the silence of the empty space. The buyers were stunned, but happy the deal was closed. Lisa walked beside me, her face proud. But as we stepped outside and the warm sun touched my face, I realized that the victory was only half the battle. There were still consequences. Consequences. That word hung in the air as I left the boardroom. The deal was closed. $50 million was safe. But my life felt like a battlefield littered with shrapnel. The legal battle dragged on for another 6 months. Clara filed a lawsuit, attempting to overturn the prenup, claiming it was signed under duress. But she stood no chance. My legal team, spearheaded by Lisa, was flawless. They presented the logs from the hidden router, her text to Mark about the divorce plan, and, crucially, her own conflicting testimony. When she realized she was losing the case, Clara tried to settle. She offered to return some of the money, just so I would drop the charges against Mark and give her more than the contract stipulated. I refused. I wasn't going to negotiate on principle, and frankly, I didn't want her to get another cent to fund her greedy life. Mark's end was even messier. When my legal team provided evidence of his financial misconduct, not just the $5 million from my fund, but smaller abuses he'd committed for years, the board, of which I was still a partial owner, had no choice but to fire him in disgrace. Criminal charges were filed. I heard he tried to get jobs at small startups, but his reputation was irrevocably destroyed. He became a financial pariah, and I felt no remorse. The betrayal of a friend hurts deeper than the betrayal of a spouse. During those 6 months, I had to accept the fact that I had lived in a fabricated world. Clara was a perfect wife only because her role demanded it. She was a professional con artist. Every kiss, every caress, every piece of concern for my business, it was all part of her phase one. Once I truly internalized that, the pain went away. All that was left was cold clarity. I sold my company. I won the divorce. I punished the traitors. I was free, but I was alone. My oceanside mansion, which we chose together, now felt like a golden cage I had built for myself. I walked its empty halls, and the only sound was the echo of my footsteps. I had the money, but I had lost faith. I asked myself, does real love exist? Do all the people around me just see my bank account? That's when I did the only thing that made sense. I walked away from it all. I moved the majority of the $50 million into the charitable trust Lisa helped create. It wasn't to impress anyone. It was to rid myself of the weight of the money that had caused so much pain. I kept enough to live comfortably, but not enough to be a target. And then I left. I abandoned my mansion, my sports cars, the entire glittering facade. I bought a small condo in a different city where no one knew my name, my history, or my bank account. I started volunteering, helping young entrepreneurs who, like my former self, only had an idea and desperation. I started coding again, but for fun this time. 2 years have passed. I'm sitting on a small patio now, drinking cheap but delicious coffee. I'm not a millionaire on paper, but I'm a millionaire in experience. I learned to trust not words, but actions. Clara and Mark? They are just a distasteful memory. I heard Clara is struggling to find a rich husband in Miami, her reputation following her like a shadow. Mark, he's fighting. They are both stuck in the golden cage they built for themselves with their own greed. And me? I walked out of it. I haven't opened my heart completely yet. It's a wound that heals slowly. But now, when I meet someone who seems genuine, I know I can trust my instinct, because it once saved me from financial ruin and total heartbreak. Money can buy luxury, but it can't buy loyalty. It only amplifies what is already inside a person. In Clara and Mark, it amplified greed. In me, it amplified strength and resolve. If you take one thing from my story, let it be this. When you build your success, don't forget to fortify your home. And if someone tries to tear it down, don't cry. Be the architect of your own consequence, not its victim. I lost $50 million in trust, but I saved $50 million in cash. And in the end, I gained something much more valuable, my true freedom.